It also leads to creative thinking. There are other reasons why reading is important for people, especially children in our country. Our children are growing up in an age of violence. The Taliban-type outlook on life is as straight as an arrow. That is, a grievance is redressed by violence. So life in the Taliban world is no longer as alluring as a kaleidoscope. Rather, it is black and white. Imagine growing up in a black and white world. Now, if only those people were hooked on fiction, or something they found interesting to learn about, the grimness of their perspective could be diluted with life's myriad colors. Readers of literature tend to be peaceful because they learn to see a multitude of points of view. Reading leads to tolerance because it shows us our wonderful diversity in cultures, languages, and beliefs. I think it's important that we make a countrywide effort to get children reading. And this is why we organized the Children's Literature Festival in Lahore in November, which was attended by 20,000 people, most of whom were children. Encouraged by this, we plan to hold another Children's Literature Festival in Peshawar in October this year. Besides children and apart from well-known writers, we will be projecting several new writers today and tomorrow because we want to give them a platform from which they can be noticed and appreciated by readers. Pakistani writers have made their way towards greater excellence and fame. Talent in writing is a precious asset and deserves to be nurtured. As a publisher, I know the value of this talent and also how vulnerable it is to the habit of rote learning and a lack of access to books, especially literature. Thank you very much for listening to me. I would like here to pay a tribute to the British Council, to Mashood Rizvi, Martin Fryer, and Susie Nicklin, who have been like a pillar of support for the Karachi Literature Festival, and without whose constant efforts, this would not have been possible. I would also like to thank our sponsors, the US Consulate in Karachi, the US Embassy in Islamabad, the French Embassy, the French Consulate, the Alliance Française, the Consulate of the Federal Republic of Germany, the Goethe Institute, and the University of Texas, which has also supported us this year, and also Tapal Chai and Norris drinks. So thank you very much for being with us today. Have a wonderful 2 days, and Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Amina. Very generous of you. They say that if you're quitting any habit or if you're adopting a new habit, the third day is the most important day. First day, you're really charged up. Second day, the thinking comes in. And third day, you are gone either way. So we have actually reached the third festival. So I think we are pretty safe. I think you will see, inshallah, the fourth and fifth and so on and so forth. I will request Amina again to please come and introduce Honorable Dr. Marilyn Wyatt, who is amongst us and who will be speaking to us shortly.
Thank you, Masood. I love your sense of humor. I have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Marilyn Wyatt. Marilyn Wyatt is the wife of the US Ambassador to Pakistan, Cameron Munter. She holds a PhD in comparative literature from the Johns Hopkins University and a BA with a major in English from Cornell University. Among her many careers, she has worked as a diplomat, a consultant to non-profit boards, and a writer for the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. She is the author of the Handbook of NGO Governance, which has been translated into 15 languages, and other publications and articles on various topics. She currently works for the US Agency for International Development in Islamabad. Dr. Marilyn Wyatt.
Thank you very much, Amina. Mr. David Martin, Mr. Asif Faruqi, Mr. William Dalrymple, Mr. Martin Fryer, honored writers, dear readers, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum. It's with a feeling of great honor and even greater humility that I stand here before this podium this morning. I come before you not as a remarkable literary talent, of whom there are many in this room, and whose talent we're so eager to enjoy and explore over the next 2 days. I'm really not much of a writer myself, and therefore I stand before you rather on the other side of the equation as a reader, representing all of the readers who are here this morning and are making literature festivals such as this one across Asia an important event today. I'd like to take this occasion to congratulate Mr. Dalrymple on his recent achievement in Jaipur, and in so doing, pay tribute to the community of readers who are helping to shine a spotlight on the dazzling energy and diversity of writing coming out of the region today. I myself, happily, am a lifelong reader, although I have to say that's not exactly a true statement. I actually began to read when I was 4 or 5 years old, and one of my earliest memories is sitting on my mother's lap in the rocking chair in her bedroom, as she, with great patience, and I, with even greater frustration, worked through one of the classic Dick and Jane primers that were popular in America a half-century ago. By the time I was 8 years old, I was reading on my own, and around that age, I stole one of my older sister's books. I say stole because she was very possessive of her precious collection of books and had forbidden me from ever so much as touching it. But of course, I ignored her and kiped one of the books with the most enticing cover imaginable. It was a Nancy Drew mystery, and it had the bewitching title of The Mystery of the Moss-Covered Mansion. Now, some of you may have been around long enough to know Nancy, and if so, you know she's a golden-haired teenage sleuth who drives a red roadster and is not afraid to imagine the creepiest, most spider-filled mansions imaginable. And going with Nancy as she pushed open the door and tiptoed into the moss-covered mansion is simply an experience I will never forget. It was like listening to Bob Dylan for the first time, or, well, like one of those other first-time experiences that's life-transforming, but one really doesn't talk about in a public forum such as this one. So from the moment I entered the moss-covered mansion, I was really hooked, not just on Nancy Drew mysteries, but on reading more generally, as an ever-renewable process of discovery offering immensely pleasurable, spine-tingling experiences. Over the years, I've evolved, somewhat reluctantly, from an under-the-bed covers with a torch kind of reader to a more self-conscious reader practitioner. But even with this loss of innocence, it's no exaggeration that being a reader is one of those basic identities that today makes me who I think I am. Reading always has and always will define how I interact with the world. And thanks largely to books, that world extends well beyond the constraints of the here and now. Now, I'm certain that 99.9% of you in this room today would agree that reading is among life's basic pleasures. Indeed, it's one of life's essential necessities. Reading is information, reading is friendship, reading is understanding, reading is discovery, reading is achievement, reading is transcendence. And that being the case, just imagine, dear readers, what life is like for those children for whom reading doesn't exist. Imagine a life with no escape, no entry into moss-covered mansions of the mind, where there are always, in other rooms, other wonders, as one of Pakistan's own put it so beautifully. No playing with language and ideas, no thrill of discovery, no welcome into that vast human community that exists beyond the here and now. A here and now which for the child that doesn't read is certainly one of struggle and isolation. Here in Pakistan, we have tremendous literary talent today that's buoyed up by the community of readers representing all of you here today. But beyond the very doors of this hotel, there are too many children who do not read and so will never become a member of our joyous and privileged group. Pakistan's literacy rate is really only about 50%. Just imagine that, dear readers. Nearly 100 million people sitting right outside the doors who will never know the advantages of reading. Now, there are many reasons for this sad and intolerable statistic, but one of them is that children, particularly poor children, simply don't have access to books. They grow up in houses where there are no books lying around and where their mothers do not have the time or themselves don't have the skill to pull their children up onto their laps and teach them to read. And even worse, they attend schools that are not equipped with a library or where the books are kept under lock and key. Just imagine, dear readers, going to school and finding out that the books are a rare, untouchable commodity and that they therefore have little to do with the business of learning. Happily, this is a situation that we here today can do something about, so that thousands of children in Pakistan will have the opportunity to become lifelong readers. I'm very proud today to announce that the American Embassy, in partnership with Oxford University Press, has formed an initiative especially for the Karachi Literature Festival called Donate a Book So a Child Can Read. Out in the vendors area, you'll find a stall with a big banner that says exactly that, Donate a Book So a Child Can Read. This stall is accepting books, for all the books you care to donate, dear readers. They will go to children for whom books are a rarity or indeed even an unknown commodity. Drawing on our Ambassadors Fund, the American Embassy has pledged to build or refurbish as many as 10 library rooms in schools where they are currently lacking. We'll be working with local partners to introduce libraries to schools serving children of all ages in the neediest communities of Karachi and surrounding areas. And to outfit these libraries, the Oxford University Press has generously committed today to donating 5,000 books to this effort, a generous contribution that deserves our applause. But the efforts of the American Embassy and the Oxford University Press aren't enough. Bringing books to Pakistan's and Karachi's children is an effort that we can all take part in because we, especially we, dear readers here today, know how important it is. So please, when you're out browsing and buying from the terrific assortment of books available in the vendors areas, please buy and donate a book to a child in need along with the books that you buy for yourselves. Do this as a gesture of homage to those who taught you to read, and as a tribute to the importance of reading in your own life. There's a box under the banner where you can donate the books. Your contributions will go into the new libraries and there into the hands of the children of Karachi who need them most. Donate a book so a child can read, dear readers, and help make the Karachi Literature Festival one in which the whole city can rejoice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wyatt. I now request our Director of Programs, Pakistan, Martin Fryer, to please come and introduce the keynote speaker, William Dalrymple.
Thank you very much, Mashood. And I have the great privilege to introduce the festival's keynote speaker, writer and historian William Dalrymple, well known to many of you, but I think it's fair just to introduce him to those who may not know him. He is the author of seven books, a great historian and travel writer. Many of these are award-winning books and mostly focusing on this part of the world, from the Holy Mountain, White Mughals, The Last Mughal, and also, as has already been mentioned, one of the key people behind the Jaipur Festival, and I think it's fair to say we at the Karachi Festival will be much inspired by that wonderful, successful event. His new book, out in the autumn, which is the topic of his talk this morning, has the title The Return of the King, Shah Shuja and the West's First Catastrophe in Afghanistan, and we will hear him talk about the First Afghan War from 1839 to 1842. With all respect, because we have an opportunity this afternoon to hear William again in conversation with Camilla Shamsi. We won't take questions this morning because we're running a bit behind. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions this afternoon, and also there is an opportunity to meet William when he signs books in the book tent, and you'll have an opportunity there for one-to-one questions. William, please come. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a great pleasure to bring this still unpublished book back to Pakistan, since, as my friend Ahmed Rashid reminded me as I was coming in, the idea actually was born for this book in his library in Lahore 3 years ago, looking at his wonderful collection of books about the Northwest frontier and Afghanistan and the Khyber. And that afternoon I went off to the amazing, extraordinary archives in Anarkali, the Punjab State Archives, and saw stacked up on the walls of Anarkali's tomb the entire British correspondence relating to the First Afghan War, and many of the original Persian documents of the various Afghan players sitting in this fabulous library which so few scholars go to visit in the middle of the Punjab Secretariat in Anarkali. There's a wonderful staff of about 8 ladies busy making tea there every day who rather resent the presence of anyone coming to look at their documents. But once they get used to the idea, they're extremely helpful. And it was in that building that this book was born. The book interest for me was obviously in its parallels with the current situation. In 1839, the British sent an army through what is now Pakistan, through the Bolan Pass up into Kandahar. 18,000 troops marched in, and famously, only one man came out, Dr. Brydon on his horse, riding into Jalalabad after the entire army of Kabul had been destroyed and ambushed in the passes, in the Khud-Kabul Pass. It was a war which caused a great deal of soul-searching. At this period, this was at the peak of the British Empire. This was the moment when the British controlled 40% of the world economy. Today it's around 3%, just to give you a comparative figure. And yet, at this moment of supreme economic power, the British suffered not just a defeat, but